Okay, I'm going to have a start so that I'm not wasting our panelists and the people who have joined on time. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Recyclan's first webinar. So very exciting for us. My name is Koinsola Akimrele, and I head the marketing team for Recyclan. I will be moderating this webinar. As you can see, the title of the webinar is Sustainable Industry Talks, Bridging the Financial Gap in Nigeria. We thought it important to just foster more honest conversations within the recycling industry. As you guys know, it is still relatively new in Nigeria, and as much as we can do to help the industry grow and propel. So essentially, that's the reason for this series and for this first webinar. So I'd like to just have our CEO Harold Okonobor just give like a 2-minute intro on the series and basically what you're in store for today.
Good morning, everyone. Well, a good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone. Just like Koinsola has said, for us, it's really remarkable. I just basically want to go straight and right into why we're actually having these sustainable industry talks. We happen to have conversations day to day with other peers, counterparts, colleagues in the whole space. And we realize that sometimes we actually, not even sometimes, most times we share the same issues. And we got together. I remember when Koinsola, the team, we sat down to discuss and think about like ways by which we could approach this. We didn't want it to be the usual conversation around, recycling, what do we do? Like very, 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 very mundane or very vague conversations. We wanted the things that primarily would touch the core of the industry. And one of them is finance. We understand that we are the way forward. What we do is, I usually tell people that by virtue of playing within the recycling space, that I'm very, very sure I'm going to heaven, because we get to clean up the environment, we get to help people, there's inclusion for women, and a lot of other benefits in what we do. And we realize that finance is usually a problem for most. So we said, okay, what can we do to help the industry actually move forward? Do we want to be looked at as the industry that survives off grants and off donations? This is a viable industry in a sense, and it's actually something that deserves the applaud, the accolades for every single thing we do. And we then said, okay, let's get some of the, juggernauts in the house, amongst the many we have. Let's have a very insightful conversation. Let's also bring some financial partners that we know of that are happy to help the recycling value chain actually, proceed or grow. And let's see what we can actually, like the gems we can get out of it, the opportunities we can get out of it. We believe that by doing this, we'll be able to create the opportunity for other recyclers to be able to access structured financing, cheap financing. Our business is not one where we would want to be taking debt investments that are really, really high. So we want to be able to grow this industry by having these talks. We look forward to all the other conversations that we're going to have over the coming months. We believe in 2022, we'll be able to touch very, very, very core areas and key areas. We already have, we've reached out to some people who procure equipment, just so we can begin to, as asset financiers, just so for everyone within the industry, we can begin to get access to all these, perks, so to say, and we can grow the industry. So without wasting further time, I believe I could actually hand this over back to Koinsola, and we could actually proceed. I look forward to us having a very, very, very insightful conversation today. And for the panelists here, I have I've written down questions, and I can't wait to actually ask everyone, and we see how RSA is laughing. I have a lot of questions you get. So thank you all for joining, and let's get it started. Thank you.
Thank you, Harold. Yeah, Harold always has a lot of questions. So I would say to the panelists, please be prepared to answer. But like I posted in the chat, as we're speaking, as the panel is going on, to all attendees, please feel free to post your questions. We wouldn't answer them right away, but we'll circle back during the Q&A section. Okay, so firstly, I'd just like to introduce all the panelists so we know everyone that's speaking on the call. So first, we have Arese, who is the Executive Secretary for FBRA, Food and Beverage Recycling Alliance for Nigeria. We have Mazi Ukonu, who is the founder of recycling company Recycle Points. He's also the president of the Recycling Association of Nigeria. We have our very own Chime, who is the group CEO for Recyclan. We have Jibril, who is the MD of Iron Capital, that is an investment banking firm. And last but definitely not the least, we have Kashetolu, who is the group head client coverage and financial institutions at Sterling Bank. So that's about 4 to 2. 4 from the recycling industry and 2 from the finance industry. But like Carl said, this session proves to be extremely insightful, and I can't wait to hear all the gems that everyone has to drop. So the first question I have, I'm going to direct at Chime and Arese. I'll ask Chime to answer first and then Arese. And I just want to know, in your opinion, how has the reception to recycling culture changed in Nigeria as a whole from when you first entered the industry to date? And I want you to think of it from federal level and an individual consumer level as well.
Thank you very much, Coinsel, and thank you very much, everyone, for making our time to be here. It's really, really exciting to be here. Very interesting question. Nigeria is an interesting market. So how has the recycling culture, I'll just paraphrase, how has the recycling culture been received in the Nigerian market? We have what, GDP of $432 billion and GDP per capita of $2,000. We're a third world country. I don't like to say it, but that's what it is. And the majority of Nigerians don't even know about global warming or recycling, but what we've seen, interestingly, is there's been heavy push on the recycling culture. It's more from a commercial angle, and commercial in the sense that it's providing livelihood. And I'll emphasize on that word, livelihood. So due to the nature of our organization, we play across multiple jurisdictions. And I've seen the recycling culture in Europe. People are passionate. We see millennials, Gen Z, they want to save the earth and all that. In Nigeria, we have some people passionate, but majority of the recycling activity is by an informal sector that's trying to earn a decent living. And it's very, very inspiring, really. We've seen very, very, very interesting progress in the past 24 months. Kano State, I refer to Kano. Kano today, and we'll publish, Recyclan will publish a couple data on this over the course of 2022. But Kano today has one of the highest recovery rates of PET in Nigeria. And why is that? Because as the PET recycling ecosystem is sustainable. There's demand, there's capital going there, and there's infrastructure. So what happens is people are willing to buy, there's the machinery to recover it. And so the people that would typically, our margeries or the people that will have nothing to do normally are now involved in this recycling culture. So what we've seen really, recycling culture in Nigeria in the past year and a half, 2 years has grown significantly, but not necessarily from a recycling culture angle, but more from a commercial and economic activity angle, which is also very interesting. We reference to today's topic. But yeah, that's my answer.
Okay.
I'll hand over to Arese.
Thank you very much, Recyclan, for inviting me to this very important discussion. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be part of this. In terms of the question that was asked, in my opinion, how do I see the recycling culture in Nigeria? For me, I would say that it is evolving and it is rapidly changing in the last couple of years. So I first got into the recycling space over 15 years ago during my master's program in the UK. And then I was doing a part-time job with a recycling firm, Wastewatch. at that point, that was the first time I heard about it, but it was exciting, and you could see the passion and the culture was really strong in the UK. And afterwards, my next 2 years after my master's program, I focused on learning a lot about recycling, working across boroughs in London. And then I came back to Nigeria with so much drive. That was in 2007. With so much drive, so much information, so much knowledge. And then I was talking about recycling. Everybody was like, what are you talking about? I mean, it was strange then. Because as you know, for those of us that grew up in Nigeria, recycling was, it was more of reuse that people were doing in terms of growing up. A lot of reuse was going on. That was in 2007 when I came back. But 14 years later, as of today, in the last 2-3 years, I've been focused on in the space. And just like Chime said, so yes, it is changing, but there's still a lot to be done in terms of building the culture. And finally, as we know, most countries, especially in the Europes, it didn't take them 2 years to get to where they are today. It took them a while. So I believe if we continue to focus on what we're doing right now in our different spaces and bringing all the waste management value chain to enhance recycling together, I believe we'll get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Arese and Chima. So you're both pretty much in line with the same thing. The recycling industry is relatively new, but it's growing, it's rapidly changing. And then something that Chima said that obviously links in with today's topic is that he thinks, or from his observation, the reason for the growing industry is because of commercial use of, well, he specifically said to PET plastic, but there has been increased demand over the past couple of years for recycled products, and when there's demand, obviously supply will increase. Funny enough, I wasn't going to ask Mazi this question, but I do want to hear his take because he is, I would say, more in the operational field in recycling. So I do want to hear his take on the same first question. So from when you jumped into the industry, when you founded Recycle Points till now, what have you seen? What are the changes that you've seen in the industry?
Thank you so much, Kanshal, and it's a pleasure being here. Can you hear me? My response will be very similar to what Chime has said, because we're in an environment that is clearly driven, by the drive of people to be able to survive, and it has always been transactional for us to be able to leverage opportunities that will help people earn a living. So it's not really, as you would see in other climes, the idea and the enlightenment that comes. Can you hear me? I think my network is bad. Hello?
No.
Hello?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. So it has always come from the it doesn't come from the enlightenment that people are aware of the value or the extractive value that comes with the items that they are recycling. It is now today that the advocacy has started pushing out to be able to enlighten people about what recycling is all about. But I would say time immemorial in Nigeria, scavengers have been plugging different dump sites and landfills, trying to be able to get items that they believe has value. And people that actually interested in those items, tend to be able to offer little or nothing, for those items. But the narrative has changed. The narrative has changed in the sense that based on what you said, Kanishala, that there is a global demand. And most times also, if you see what is happening in the plastic sector, it is a clarion call for us to be able to, or for people to be able to, especially packaging companies, to be able to be responsible for their packaging. And in producing new items, they are now being mandated by regulatory authorities to be able to inject a percentage of recycling recycling materials into their virgin packaging. So that has clearly changed the narrative. It has further emboldened transactions and commercialization of recycling. And again, it has also continued those clarion calls to be able to see the dangers and environmental issues caused by, irresponsible waste disposal, continues to embolden the idea and enlightenment on recycling. So that's what we're currently seeing now. People are getting a mix of knowing why they're doing recycling, as against also trying to be able to recover those items of value for benefits to survive. So that's the situation now, and it's an interesting one because in our country now we are seeing it developing across various segments. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So with this increasing demand, global demand for recycled products, what other industries would, and I'll throw this to RSA first, and then I'll throw it back to Mazi as well. What other industries would you say would play a big role in propelling this industry, in helping people get the supply for the demand, basically? So in helping propel the recycling industry, what other industries would you say we need collaboration with?
Okay, thank you very much, Manisala, for the question. So when we talk about recycling industry, we're also promoting the green economy. And for the green economy, we need to ensure that the social, economic, and environmental factors are in place. So the first economy, I would say it can influence, or the first industry is the waste management industry, because if we have an efficient waste management system, it will also help to propel the recycling industry. So for example, if we have a very good segregation at source and the collection strategy is right, we can also help to propel the recycling industry. The second is infrastructure development. We know there's a lot of investment that is required for this relatively new sector. So if we have a lot of investments on infrastructure, it can also boost the infrastructure sector. We know that having this industry in place will need financial capability. So the financial industry is also very key. And I'm very happy that Recyclan has decided to bring the finance players into this session, because they are very key and critical to propelling the recycling industry. And finally, social impact sector. So most of the activities happening in the space is also helping to have social impact in terms of welfare, especially in our particular scenario in Nigeria. So it is critical that we can also help to support the communities, to support the system in a way that socially people can be upgraded, people can be upskilled, and they can use recycling as a source of income. So those are the sectors I would say can propel the recycling industry. Thank you.
Okay, if I would quickly add to that, and interesting, I think Arisa has actually touched the very major points. And recycling clearly has been seen as a platform that a lot of people could leverage. Today we see even people in the health sector, leveraging recycling to be able to provide certain basic health, services. And again, not just the people in the financial sector, but everybody that's especially in the entire value chain. You see a lot of activities that are happening that would require infrastructural development, owing to things that had to do with things that as important as logistics, as also to things that RSA mentions that have to deal with clearly social welfare. So I'll tell people that recycling is a platform that has various facets to it, because a lot of the items that are recovered speak to a whole lot of various entities in the sphere of the economy. So I always see it in two ways. I use the word C. C meaning S meaning social, the E meaning economical, and then the second E meaning environmental. So this idea makes you see more to what recycling and waste recovery has in store. And then when you look at the various aspects I mentioned, social covers a whole lot of angles, economic covers a whole lot of angles, and then the last one, but not the least, which is the major issue, the environment covers a whole lot of angle. So everybody I see that plays a role in any of these facets actually has something to offer in recycling, but the scope actually broadens to a whole lot of factors that you see that is happening. And the key is infrastructural development, which is one of the things that you see that is calling forth, the attention of especially those that are in governance, the government of the day, because clearly a success in this space has a way of impacting not just on the GDP, but in the livelihood of those in any society.
Thank you both. Kasia Tolu, I'm not sure if I saw that you raised your hand. Did you want to add to this question, or was that a mistake?
No, I'm not sure I raised my hand, sorry.
Okay, no problem. No. So the industry that I would like to focus on, as per the title of this call, is the finance industry and what they can do to help. Both Arese and Mazi mentioned infrastructure. Arese also mentioned that the waste management industry, setting that up can be very, very capital intensive, and that would require a large injection of money. So some statistics for the finance guys, because I know you like numbers. It is estimated that the waste management industry in Nigeria is worth about $8 billion a year. Now, I don't know that sounds like a lot of money to me. So I would just like to ask Jubril and Kasia Tolu if you can shed some insight onto why you think investing in the waste management industry isn't, correct me if I'm wrong as well, but doesn't seem to be a priority for a lot of finance houses.
Kashi, do you want to start, or should I give it a go?
Jubril, please go ahead. I'll jump in.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you very much for the introduction and for inviting me to have this conversation. I think it's a legacy issue, to answer your question. Recycling and waste management hasn't been one of those sectors that historically financiers, well, at least financiers in this part of the world have focused on. We've focused on oil, we've focused, paid more attention to infrastructure. We focus even on gas. Only recently have we started focusing on sectors like agriculture, housing, technology, and fintech. And increasingly, we find that banks, because I don't want to use the word financial institutions because that's a bit too loose. We find that banks in the country are paying attention to the space. And I'm very pleased that we have Kashi on the call here. His bank are doing a tremendous job in the recycling space, and I don't want to steal his thunder. He would spend more time talking about what they do. But look, Nigeria produces about 32 million tons of waste a year, and Lagos itself produces about 10,000 tons of waste daily, right? So there is a big opportunity there. And look, I don't want you to feel, or people to go away thinking it's a Nigeria issue. It's not. Only less than 10% of the plastic waste ever produced on this planet have been recycled. So it's a global problem, and it needs a global response. But to answer your question a bit more directly, the opportunity is there in this space, and the financial tools to get the job done also exist. They may be, they may need to a bit of adapting here and there, but the tools do exist. And I think with more awareness, with more wastepreneurs coming into the space, and with a bit of policy direction and support from government, I think it's very possible that this sector could leapfrog other sectors within the next 3 to 5 years. Kashi, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, so thank you, Jibril, and thank you to the Recyclan team for the invitation. Yes, so Jibril has spoken quite well, but to just broaden it a bit more and to demystify what we are calling finance, is simply providing capital in whatever form to an entrepreneur to get about his business and make returns, which are enough to pay off the loan or pay whatever returns to the capital provider and make a living, pay his staff, and make profit. At the end of the day, the issue with accessing finance is not restricted to only the recycling industry, though it may seem more prevalent. It's in this part of the world, it's across the entire business, because one is to act. For me, the issues are a bit less. Let's be a bit more granular and make it simpler, right? There is the availability of finance and the availability of the right type of finance, right? So money can be available or made available to you, but is that the type of funding in terms of pricing, in terms of structuring, and in terms of tenor that you want? The challenge we found in our part of the world is that no, what we have available is what we call short-term capital, because everybody has a short-term view. Most of us have spent virtually all of our existence knowing about people financing the oil and gas industry, very quick turnaround time in terms of coming into money, financing, manufacturing, and things like that. But you would have noticed some interesting things in recent times. Competition has increased across capital providers, and whether they are banks or other types of providers of capital, investment banks, private equity firms, even some quasi-government institutions, competition has increased. And so increasingly, you find a lot more of these players taking interest in those areas that are not traditional for them. And one of that is the waste recycling space. The barrier to that is, to put in simple terms, it is difficult for me to finance what I don't know or what I don't have some understanding of. If you work at a banker today, he can tell you how to provide financing for an LPO. He can tell you how to provide financing to purchase equipment, to some extent, with a degree of exposure, how to do asset-backed financing and things like that. But there's certain industries that people struggle with. Prior to the last maybe 10 years or 8 years, to be precise, agriculture was one of such spaces. But today, that is not the case. And this is because there's been a deliberate attempt by a lot of stakeholders, from government to the banks themselves to the agropreneurs, in creating awareness, providing information, and shedding more light and clarity as to what opportunities exist in this space. I think we need to do a lot more of that for the recycling space, because to be honest, Coinsola, $8 billion per annum is not, by any stretch of the imagination, a small amount of money at all. And this is an opportunity that is sitting, waiting to be plucked, right? And banks are increasingly looking for new ways to create value. So, in a nutshell, there are different types of financing available to individuals trying to enter into emerging markets today. Again, like I said before, the challenge is the type of financing and whether it's fit for purpose. With a lot more engagement, a lot more work being done, particularly by companies like you. And let me step back a bit to say something very quickly. I think this is a fantastic idea, this kind of session. And I would like to see it done more frequently, right? Because it helps to create some advocacy for the industry. So I would not leave this session today the way I came in. I'll probably end up having a lot more clarity, a lot more information. To be honest, I didn't know it was an $8 billion business, right? So that is food for thought for me. Imagine a few of my other colleagues across the industry. Now, I'm not talking about banking alone. Like I said before, capital or financing exists beyond the banks for operators, right? Even the private equity companies, even the quasi-government institutions like BOI, the Bank of Industry, the Development Bank, they need your assistance in bringing more clarity, more transparency to your sector. And I think I like what Recyclan is doing by being the advocate starting this journey. Is the same thing that you see happening in the fintech space. So the regulator says, oh, I'm not comfortable, I don't know what you guys are doing. And then you see a few of the players come together to engage the regulator, to educate them more and more on the benefits, on the advantages, on the pros of having a diversified number of players coming into the finance sector. It's the same thing that I think Recyclan is trying to do. And I must commend you guys for taking this initiative. And thank you for that. I think post this and a few more sessions, you'll find that a few more institutions are willing to lend to the space. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much to Kashatulu and Jibril for answering so honestly. And thank you for being open to even hearing, I guess I would say, the recycling industry's plight to our issues and how you can help. You both mentioned financial tools being available. Kashatulu, you specifically said that the money is available, but the way the money is available, the structure may have to be tweaked a little bit. I'm not sure if you're able to elaborate a tiny bit on that. So the types of financing available and why it may not be a good fit in the way that it is presented right now for the recycling industry, and what sort of steps the recycling industry and the financing, well, you said finance is a broad term, but the recycling industry and banks and other finance houses can take together to make sure that the financing available does fit our mold.
Okay, so sure, like I said, it all starts with the amount of information that is made available to your partner in the finance world, right? The more information it has as to the opportunities that exist in the space, your value chain, then they're better able to take a decision as to where they want to play. Some people will start from the least difficult place. And I've purposely not started off by making this about my bank, because I also want to be like you and advocate for more participation across the financial world in the recycling space. But I will still spend some time to explain to you what we are trying to do, which Jibril alluded to before. So I'll borrow from what Chime said earlier, right? And if I recall, it's that, so you can't, no, it was Mazi, I think. You cannot afford to take on expensive debt. The business is at infancy, right? So the margins are quickly dissipated on costs that you're using to build the infrastructure to make that business sustainable. So you have to be careful what kind of costs in terms of pricing of debt you're taking on. And so, but what you find today in the industry is that our debt is expensive in Nigeria. And we have to be very honest about that. It has in the last say 5 years, been less expensive because of deliberate attempts by the government through maybe the CBN to create some intervention windows for specific sectors. And I think that as we shed more light and as we advocate more for the waste recycling space, it will become a sector of choice for these same organizations to give preference to. So today for agriculture, for aviation, for power, I think of recent for the steel industry, right? You would find single-digit loans are available, right? And of course, there are some criteria that you have to go through to access such funds. But the first and most important thing is that it is now available, right? So it's a question of approaching us, for example, to take you through such a process that will make you or any other player in the renewable or in the recycling space qualify to access such. You'd also agree with me that, I mean, you can't get any better than you accessing debt at single digit, right? So that's the starting point. The second point to note is the tenor of the facility, or the loan, as it were. Because of the stage in which the industry itself is in, you need more longer term financing, right, than a commercial loan would give to you or a commercial lender would give to you. So we're talking maybe facilities of maybe between 3 to 5 to 7 years. And why is that? There's some monies you use to import equipment that you use in processing the waste to international standards for export, or even international standards for local consumption, right? Because you're competing with imports as well if you're selling in the market locally. So those equipment cannot be written off over a year. It's just not possible. They're too expensive for that. You also need money to continue to keep those machinery up and running, right? So you find, if you do your model, your cash flows, you have a 3 to 5 year, or even sometimes the outer 7-year window for the kind of financing you want. That is a bit difficult to get in the financial world today, at least with the commercial banks, right? But again, the window exists for you to access that, depending on the kind of partner you're talking to, right? And so that's why I emphasized before that funding exists. It's just the type of funding. And even in determining the kind of funding you require, it's what you need the money for. So you need money to buy equipment, it will be long term. You need money for raw material inputs to quickly buy, process and sell, it will be short term and quickly revolving, right? Those two types of financing do exist. It's just shedding more light or clarity to your financial partner to make them and you come to a decision as to what works for you. It's important, as I conclude, that the entrepreneur needs to be clear on what he wants and not allow himself to be forced into taking what the bank says is available. That is a recipe for disaster. If I give you money to buy equipment that you need 3 to 5 years to pay back on, and the money I'm giving you is just 1 year, we already know that from day one, we have a problem. You find some entrepreneurs take that money just because they just need to get this equipment in. When we get to that bridge, we cross it. It doesn't work that way, because also we're building a relationship, you're building a credit history, such that if tomorrow one bank fails you, based on the history that you've built of being a credible borrower, you can move to any bank and you become a beautiful bride, as it were. Let me end by saying something. Some of the largest titans we have in the industry today were just less than 15 years ago topping the list of debtors in the economy, this same country. Less than about 15 years ago. But today, they're beautiful brides. It's all about understanding what you want and making sure that that is what is given to you. So the charge I will leave you with is you have to make demands of us on the finance side. Be clear on what you want. There is someone out there who is going to be able to give it to you. Thank you. I hope I've been able to be of help.
No, you definitely have. Thank you so much, Kashafu. You spoke at length on what the finance or what, to your knowledge, you think banks have to offer. So with that being said, and you mentioning that entrepreneurs or waste management industry players should be extremely specific about what they want. Obviously, we have a few of them on the call. I would like Chime and Mazi to speak about their main, I would say maybe top 2 financial problems that you faced whilst growing your business. And then I would like us to, obviously, one solution cannot be found, but I do want everyone on this call to leave a little bit more enlightened. I do want a conversation to start and to have well, what's the word? Momentum. I don't want this call to end and then the conversation just drops. So yes, with that being said, Chima and Mazi, can you please shed some light on your top 2 financial constraints you found whilst growing your business?
Mazi, you can start and I'll come after you.
Okay, all right, thank you. It's finance is a very challenging topic, and I'm very happy when I listened to having to be able to come into this space disciplined enough to understand what you need and to be able to go for it based on the available resources you have. And that is actually what makes for it to survive, because you have to be able to grow. I believe if you grow organically, trying to be able to understand and then seek and apply those resources, then you can be able to meet. That's basically how it happened for us. It was challenging because there were a lot not items that we wanted to be able to be available for us to be able to make those giant strides. And we were keen to be able to, like it was mentioned, none of the financial houses would invest in something that they do not know about. So, and key in driving, this particular market is what we call, I use the word volume. The recycling sector is a volume game. It's a volume game in the sense that if you are not getting as much as it's required, then the value for those items will clearly, be eroded by the operations that you encounter within the supply chain. So this is why, access to patient capital and easy access to funding is very important. It was a huge challenge for us when we started. And we had to, at some point, skew ourselves into leveraging every opportunity, a funding opportunity, donor-supported funding, and grants that could help us, move forward while we ourselves bootstrapped, the idea, because it was supposed to be us bootstrapping it because a lot of people didn't understand the mechanics that were involved. The commercial banks, like has been earlier mentioned, didn't know what it was as would be the risk, in venturing into this. So finance was a huge issue. But then what actually prompted us to be able to move quickly was a unique proposition of idealizing innovation that would clearly gain the attention of those who are willing to be able to leverage that innovation, to be able to project a viral or entrepreneurial society. So it was the only one of the, I would say, the opportunities that we had, that as we looked at this ecosystem, we were able to, identify or idealize what clearly would speak to a whole lot of people that we are not just in the space, also in the philanthropic space and the impact-driven space, that we are looking for, I would say, opportunities to be able to project, and then Recyclan came along. It was something that you see playing in the financial inclusion space. You see it also playing in the sustainable development space. But it was really a challenge, but we took it phase by phase. And I can say that it's actually what has helped us, withstand various, I would say, tides that has come with the sector, for which we have been able to learn and grow. But I still think that it's important for us to be able to, clearly get to be at that position that was mentioned, where the market and the segment is understood very well, to be able to allow for funding to be able to flow. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For us, I'll be very, very, there's no easy way to say it, right? The journey has been extremely tough. And I'm a very blunt person, right? And I know this is something that majority of the people in this sector can relate with. We started 2018, we were trading, December 2018, we set up a factory in Ogbeda. And we started with family and friend support, kind of equity contribution. You people want to do something good, take, And, we thought it was cool. This is a very good thing. We started the normal strategy. When you come in, you want to pay 10 naira more on the bottle, and everybody will say, yes, send this guy all the green bottle, all the brown bottles, the real player, which is standard, And we thought, this is the next big thing. And truly it is. We came and it doesn't last up to 90 days. Typically, our own was 60 something, 70, the money finished. Literal finish. So which, as I said, is there are people that will be able to relate with this, right? And then when your money finishes, you now calm down and think. You're stuck with bottles. And you don't know how to recover the money back. I've converted money that they gave me to do something in my life to dirty bottles. And of course, you have to pick yourself up from there. As Kashi said, we at that point we approached what did we do? We went to BOI, we went to, and in fact, and I'm very blunt, so I'll say it bluntly, Kashi. The financial institution in Nigeria said we're too young. And that did something to us, So I used to live in Canada. I live in Nigeria now. I went to my bank in Canada and say, I have a global commodity trading business. I pick up waste from Africa and I sell to customers in Europe. And we're able to get money just from storage. We're able to get money from a foreign bank. We also leveraged some of, we had exposure, fortunately. We were able to leverage, and we brought foreign money in, continued. It was very, very hard. The journey is very, very, very hard in this business, right? And what we now say, okay, customers really want this product. And a lot of the customers we had, we were very blunt. They said, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just starting. I'm passionate about this thing. And I'll give it to you at a good price. So our customers became our partners. Okay, you don't have money to do this thing. I'll give you money. Take money. Go and pay your suppliers. What we did, we said, okay, you know what? We're Nigerians. We don't want to have that Nigerian thing that you feel like someone is scamming you. Come, we did visa on arrival. We flew our customers in. We took them to that place, Mazi, in Mile 12, where those bottles used to be. We took them to dump. We showed them how much is this bottle, 30 naira per kilo, converted it to euros. We went through that process because the bank said I'm too young. I don't have anything to show equity guys said the business is worth $200,000 now. You know, we didn't have anything to do at that point. So which is very, very important. You know, as an entrepreneur, this journey, you have to, what we've seen is problems, really, challenges bring out the best. That move, we actually brought about 4 customers, created a syndicate of customers that started funding us. Okay, I need crushers. They say, okay, I have 3 crushers in my factory I'm not using. My bank and asset finance machine. The machinery we started using started coming from. I'll give you this machine. I'll also pre-finance you. You will pay me small, maybe every load, 2 tons will be deducted towards paying for this machine. You know, then the thing now is these customers wanted us to remain with them. We wanted to grow bigger. So, which is the problem with entrepreneurs too, as Jubril says, they always want to bite more than you can chew, which is a good problem. So we also went out to look for additional capital. We stumbled, of course, on the informal lending guys. You now start seeing the problem with short-term capital, financing long-term assets, or even used for long-term businesses. You know, in our part of the value chain, we're exporting. Initially, Apapa was a nightmare. It take you 4 weeks standard if it's fast, normally 6 weeks to get into the port. Then there was the whole batch thing that can get it done in 2 weeks. And then that one goes. So we had all that whole issue. You collect money for the typical Nigerian informal lender, doesn't want their money to be out for more than 60, 90 days. And then just to enter the port is 40 days. Not even the time it takes to get the product. So you go through different cycles, and as an entrepreneur, it changes you, not just you, your team, you know. So because everything is tied to the money, your employees will get paid from that money. They will grow in their career path from that money. And for us as Recyclan, we're a very young team, and we pick our people specifically. So we're very, very energetic and excited people. So you have to also show your people there's a future here, and all hands are on deck. So, I mean, of course, the team started coming up with solutions. This is, I'm being very blunt and very honest, right? The idea of this webinar is to actually impact, to create value in this sector, right? There are some things that have worked for us, and I would like to share so it can work for other people. You know, having the right team goes a very, very, very long way. You know, and we started looking for solutions. In fact, at a point, one major thing that helped us, I'm sorry to say this, but I have to say it, as the Naira devalued, the Naira has tanked over 60% in the past 18 months, and that did help us. We now say, okay, there's a lot of pressure for FDI people to get their money out. Oil and gas, they sell forwards. Me, I can structure myself as an oil and gas business. We started selling USD forwards. So through an investment house, this is a bit more complicated, but basically, I have $50,000 that I'll get in the next 90 days. Normally, the rate is 400 Naira. Give me 390 or give me 380. We now started coming up with creative financial products to meet our needs, because the institutions didn't want to give us money at that point, you know, or we didn't know how to engage the institution at that point, and which is why it's important to create the awareness for this sector. It's very, very different, very informal. How do you understand? And the good thing is, if you actually look, right, our model, what we do, we now pre-finance vendors, understanding the challenges we've gone through. We give assets to vendors. So you need a baling machine. Here's a baling machine. You pay for it with products over a period of time, 2 years, 3 years. The typical bank will not lend you. They don't know how to do credit on you. We know how to do credit in the informal sector. Now, what we've now done, in addition, which we're rolling out next year, we already have over 100 baling machines. Our customers, you want me to give you 10,000 tons a year, Abi? The commitment of that is 50 baling machines. And you have that volume for 2 years. So we're no longer even financing those assets. So, but coming to this, no need to get into the nitty-gritty of that. The point is, the challenges going through the journey now started making us come up with creative solutions to survive. You know, And it's a very, very interesting sector, as Koinsola has stated, not just locally, but globally. And it's important for finance houses, for the financial institution, for banks to please come in. People don't need to be creative in finance. Let them be creative in their business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chime, and thank you, Mazi. As you can see, the recycling experts on this call are extremely passionate about what they do. And I hope our finance guys on the call are getting some gems and our, your education on the recycling industry and how you can help and what is needed is growing. I really want us to leave this call with some practical steps towards what can be changed. I'm not sure how quickly. My personal perception of banks in Nigeria is that they move very slowly, but I would like us to move as quickly as possible. So I would like Jibril and Kashatolu to sort of retort on the comments that Mazi and Chima made. Number one, the creativity of that Chima and his company, and well, I guess now I'm on the team as well, have had to do, the ideas that we've had to come up with on our own, because unfortunately, finance houses and banks, etc., haven't been able to meet our needs. What are your thoughts on those methods, and how would you say finance houses and banks can do better to make sure that that isn't what's happening, that everyone is essentially staying in their lane?
I think I'll take
okay.
If it's okay, I'll take this question. I like the comments that Mazi and Chime have made, as well as Kashi's comments as well. I think let's have a holistic conversation, right? We're not talking about financing, we're talking about capital. So let's focus on capital. With capital, you could have debt, and certainly under debt, you have bank financing. But that's not the only form of capital. You also have equity. I think one of the challenges, not just people in the waste management or recycling space have, but across sectors, one of the big challenges they have is trying to do with debt what only equity can do, right? So we cannot run away from getting the need for equity. Chime talked about starting off with family and friends money. You don't have an idea and start running to the bank, right? There has to be some skin in the game. Now, you may say, oh, listen, I don't have the family and friends that can give me the kind of money that I require. There are different ways to structure equity or bring capital in form of equity into your business. And I like the fact that Chime touched on a few, right? Touched on pre-financing. Pre-financing is an easy way to bring in capital into your business. And let me give you an example of how that would work. You're meant to supply something worth 100 Naira or earn 100 Naira. And you have an arrangement with whoever it is, the buyer, to pay you, say, 30% or 40% up front. They need to trust you that you'll be able to deliver, right? So that's a different conversation. Assuming you're able to deliver, you get 30 or 40% of that, which is 30 or 40 Naira. With equity contributions, you can walk into most banks or most financial institutions, at least in Nigeria, and have a conversation. It may not always end up being a successful conversation, but if you go to the first one, you learn from that conversation, you go to the next one, you just keep refining your pitch until you find an institution that will accept your 30 or 40% as equity for the deal, even if it means stock hypothecation or warehousing, or they control the process end to end, but you will get there, right? So pre-financing could also take the form, again, as Chime mentioned, not only as cash or financial capital, it could also be in form of assets, right? So you don't always need, sometimes the problem you need to solve can be solved with something else other than cash. And after all, the cash you need is to get something, to acquire or purchase something. So there are different ways you can look at that from an equity point of view and say, okay, we can raise equity in different ways, but you can't run away from the fact that you need equity. Now, let's also touch on something Mazi raised, grants. The opportunity to secure grants is there, mostly from internationals, but increasingly from impact-focused funds in Nigeria, but the opportunity is still there. I think on the equity side as well, there are sector-focused impact funds that are able to support really good ideas, but they have to be tested at least a bit to show that they are workable. Now, before I touch on debt, and I have a lot to say about debt, but before I touch on debt, there's something in between debt and equity. And we have those solutions available in Nigeria. And they're non-interest bearing financing solutions, but most people refer to them as Sharia financing. The Sharia compliant banks or the Islamic compliant banks, this has nothing to do with religion, by the way, folks. This is a financial solution. The Islamic finance institutions or Sharia compliant finance institutions have products that are bang in the middle, suitable for recycling. And if you've not explored this, I would suggest very strongly that you educate yourself in this area as well. It's not everything you go to a commercial bank for. The Islamic solutions they're pretty much set up for things like this. So I would encourage people on the call, it may be something for you to explore a bit further. I think there's a growing need for institutional capital in our space, in the waste management space, in the recycling space. However, the responsible capital providers must think about impact returns and not just commercial returns, right? There must be a way to measure impact returns as well as commercial returns. The challenge with most finance providers we have, at least in most emerging markets, I don't want to segregate this to Nigeria, is they become much better at measuring commercial returns, but not impact returns, which could actually be even more to the brand of the bank or the brand of the institution, to the perception of the institution. Impact returns go a very long way. So it may be something for the banks to consider. Now let's talk about debt, which is my favorite bit, to be honest, right? We've touched on banks, and Kashi has done a fantastic job. Again, as I said, he and his team, if you're looking for bank debt, I would strongly suggest that you have a conversation with Sterling. Sorry, Kashi, I know you're not meant to be advertising yourself here, but I think they do a fantastic job. We've touched enough on bank debt, but my DNA is capital markets, right? I do not see a long-term sustainable solution for the waste management space without the capital markets. We see bank debt here and there. We see financing from sector-focused impact funds, sometimes even private equity, but we don't see a lot of participation from people like the pension funds, from the asset managers. The real question we should ask ourselves is, how do we get them involved? How do we get that long-term 10, 15-year money involved in recycling? Now, the recycling market in Nigeria is still growing, is evolving. It's not yet there. But there are ways, right? And I don't know if it's for this call, but I'll just throw out 2 or 3 ideas, right? Let's assume we're able to leverage infra credit, right? Or even if I don't want to call out infra credit, I shouldn't have, I'm sorry. But let's assume we're able to leverage an institution that is able to provide credit enhancements or guarantees of some sort to companies that participate in the waste management, say companies in the waste management space or recycling space. Let's assume you were able to get a AAA guarantee from somewhere. And you take that AAA guarantee to any local bank, or you structure your paper into a bond, your financial instrument into a 10-year bond, a 7-year bond, a 5-year bond, whatever it is. Chances of you being successful in raising that money increase astronomically. So is there a way we can lean on some of the credit enhancement providers to look in this direction? The conversation we're having is good, but it's not just about banks. We need to deal with the entire ecosystem, right? So we need to be targeting pension funds, VCs, asset managers, PEs, banks, non-interest lending banks. We need to involve even policymakers, right? So let's assume we're able to do that. That's one solution, that we could bring long-term money into the space. I started with equity. Let's assume you can't run away from equity. Now, let's assume you need equity and you have this really cool idea, but your business is too small for the banks, and the banks can't even invest equity in your business anyway. And your business is too small for VCs, or it's too small for PEs, right? Maybe their minimum deal size is $5 million and you're looking for, say, $500,000 or whatever it is. It just pushes you further down the ladder. What if there was policy or regulation from somewhere, maybe a regulator, or maybe even internal regulation, right, from one of the banks? Let's assume one of the largest banks said, listen, we believe in this space, or we believe it's the future. We want to dedicate 1% or 2% of our lending book, or whatever it is, to recycling or to waste management. But we can't invest equity. So what we're going to do is this. We're going to partner with a VC or an impact-focused VC that looks at this space more thoroughly to match whatever investment they are making. So we have a pot of money aside, which if VC looks at your deal, or if whoever it is, the partner will looks at your deal and they're interested, if they bring 50 cents, we bring 50 cents. Or if they bring 70 cents, we bring 30. Whatever it is, right? And that helps move the needle considerably. So what I'm trying to say is that different solutions, that different alternatives, but the starting point would be, in my mind, when you have all these rocket ship ideas, or you're looking to grow your business from A to B or from A to D, right? Get a competent financial advisor. That is something a lot of people in this space don't pay attention to. You get a competent financial advisor that is able to understand your business, understand not just where you are, but where you're going, short-term, medium-term, and long-term, and is able to dimension the right kind of capital you need. As Kashi said, it's about structuring. There's the right kind of capital for you today. doesn't mean it's going to be the right kind of capital for you next year, right? So you need the right advisor to be able to dimension what is right and walk with you on that journey from A to B or A to D. I hope that has answered a few of the questions, your question, Koinsola. Sorry, I took a bit too much time.
No, that's okay. Kasha, would you like to also add a little bit?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
No, yes, just really quickly so that we can, I want everyone to give closing remarks and then jump into questions. But yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so for me, what is important about this session is to, and you said it before, and I want to reiterate it for clarity, right? Is to come out of this session with something tangible for all the participants to hold on to as next steps. If financing is the only thing we're going to unlock here today, which exactly is what it's about anyway, sustainable, how to provide sustainable financing, you know, in a nutshell, or paraphrasing, then we'd have achieved a lot. So Jubil said a lot about financing as an entire basket, right? And I wanted to say a few things to give people comfort, because I think there's a lot going on that is important that as a player in the finance industry, I bring to your attention, okay? Look at where we are, the stage of life cycle of the business as being MSMEs, micro, small, and medium scale enterprises, right? Because that is where most recycling businesses are today. They fit into that bucket. There's a lot being done in that space by various institutions, be they banks, be they development finance institutions locally, okay? And to partner with people there to provide structures for them to make their business bankable. When we're talking of it being bankable, we're not talking of banking finance, we're talking of different types of financing, okay? And then again, there's something interesting that Jibril mentioned, and that is about the non-interest banking aspect of providing liquidity. That in another way to put that is partnerships, right? And I can speak about that because I said I wouldn't do this, but I think it's important to just put the cards on the table. So Sterling is one of the few banks that has two types of licenses. We have the alternative financing license or the Islamic banking license. And then we have the traditional or conventional banking license, commercial banking license. In the partnership space, let me take a minute to explain what that is all about. It means that you will come to me, right? And me and you will be able to share your risk. And for me sharing part of your risk, you will give me a return. That means that I can provide you financing even at your current stage without asking you to go and bring your, as we say in the parlance, your grandma's head, your grandfather's left toe, and things like that. It's a risk participation thing that we have. And it's important that people know that in the Nigeria of today, in the economy we have today, these opportunities, these windows exist. There are also financing programs for small enterprises to even access grants locally. Lagos State has the Lagos State LSTF, the fund for providing financing to small and medium scale enterprises, for example. But how do you get this information, right? It's important to work with the right partner. If you look at a bank and you ask the bank the right type of questions, you will get the answers you want. Of course, there are some banks whose interests lie in financing oil and gas and blah, 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 and that's what they will do, and they do it perfectly, right? But there are also other banks like us, Sterling, who believe in using financing to make impact. which is why, by the time Recyclan came to us, it wasn't too difficult a conversation to, provide financing, right? You just need to have the right type of partner who is willing to go through the journey with you. Finally, businesses move through cycles. There's a time the business is small, there's a time it is rapidly expanding, there's a time that it plateaus, okay? And in those buckets, it requires different types of financing. As it is growing, it requires financing with a lot of risk. And so we'll be talking to a different type of partner. Once it's sufficiently de-risked, it finds itself attracting all sorts of capital because people want to take a piece of the business, right? And then once it plateaus, some people run away because they say, oh, they don't see the future for this business. And so at that stage, the business goes to the capital market and raises its own funds and suddenly becomes distributes some of its equity to the capital market and raises funds and continues to grow. There are different examples of those companies today. But one thing we should have at the back of our minds, whatever company you want to mention today, and let me mention a few, permit me, the Dangotes, the Unilevers, they started off just like a Recyclan or a Recycle Point. And they are where they are today because of the right type of financial advice. Everyone here should learn to avail themselves of financial advisory services and opportunities to know the right type of capital at time. Thank you, Controller. I see you are eager for us to move on.
Thank you so much, Kashatolu. We've run slightly over time, but thank you so much to all the panelists for dropping all the gems and suggesting and just being extremely open-minded and helpful and very open to the conversation that we're having. I'm super excited to see the fruits of this first webinar. As I said in the beginning, the Sustainable Industry Talks is a series, so this is definitely the first of many. I can see that this has just opened up like a Pandora's box of like all types of financing options. Jubril and Kashatolu have been so helpful in listing many other ways that recycling companies can get financing apart from banks. So let's not attack the banks, they're here to help, as we have seen. But I would just like all the panelists to please give one sentence just for the attendees. Just give us one sentence in summary of what you would like for us to take away. Mazi, I can see that you've already unmuted yourself, so we'll start with you.
Yeah, it's I'm very happy that the attendance to this actually speaks to, clearly people coming out to hear what they need to do, and then for them to be able to move the needle in their businesses. And one key thing which most people don't do is that idea of having to engage. I remember when Jubril said you need to be able to speak to the right financial advisor. And most times you hear that and people feel like, okay, if speaking to a financial advisor means that you have to be able to pay for some services of some sort. So you'll be surprised that people want to be able to hear you, hear the ideas, and then make suggestions of how they believe that needs to happen. So it's important for us as practitioners in these very niche markets to do that, to be able to reach out when we have problems, not just believing that those problems need to be paid for, but engagement with even colleagues in this space. I know how much most times me and Ebuka get locked in discussions that takes hours to end. So, but it is all about, what I call iron sharpening iron. And it is important that these conversations continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mazi. I'll ask Arese to give us a sentence as well on what she thinks we should take away from today's session.
Okay, thank you very much, the Recyclan team. And thank you for the panelists, because this is one of the most open, honest conversation I've had in a panel session. So thank you very much from Jubril and Kashatolu for giving us the options that are available. One key action I would take for us practitioners in this space is we need to continue to create awareness and education about the sector. It's new, is evolving, but a lot of people need to know more about it, especially financial institutions, so that they'll be more open to support in terms of financing and funding. And lastly, there is also a need for enforcement of policies. We also know that policies create an enabling environment for financial institutions to be able to support this kind of industry. A typical example, FIBRA was formed to implement the extended producer responsibility. Currently, we have just 20 members amongst the over 1,000 food and beverage companies. So we also know that there's a gap in enforcement of these policies. So in our own individual ways, we can drive this policy enforcement to ensure that we have the kind of sector that we want to have in the next 5 to 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Arase. Ask Chima to go next.
Thank you very much, Francois. For me, I'm very passionate about our industry. I'm passionate about what we're building collectively. It's not a Recyclan sector or a recycle point sector. It's a sector that we're building collectively in Nigeria. And I believe in 12, 24, 36 months, we'll add significantly to the GDP of our great nation. So this conversation and conversations like this are very inspiring and encouraging for me. And I look forward to us having more and more conversations like this and collectively engaging stakeholders, holding people like Jibril and Kashe tightly to drop money for our sector. Thank you very much, everyone. It's very exciting. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Chiba. I'll go to Jibril next. Last word.
Okay, so thank you again for having me representing ION on this call. My parting words are simple. There is capital. Please don't be in any doubt. There is capital for your sector. Accessing the capital is where the challenge is. And to access it, you need the right structures. And my honest advice is get a competent financial advisor to work with you to determine which of the structures is best for you, not just in the short term, but over the long term. Thank you.
Thank you, Jibril. And then lastly, Kasha Tolu.
Right. Sorry, I've had to switch devices, so I don't know if you can hear me clearly. Okay, excellent. So for me, it's very simple, and I'll keep it short. The banks are available and are willing to participate in providing funding to any business that is able to demonstrate that, one, they are in it for the long haul. Two, the monies that the banks are going to provide will come back. Because we should remember something. The money that I'm providing as a facility or a loan or capital is Coinsola's savings with me, is Chime's monies in his current account with me, is Maz's monies that he has kept with me that he's trying to use to buy the bottles. I have to lend it safely and make sure it is returned such that when they come to collect their monies, I'm able to pay. I can imagine how violent Coinsola will get with me if she comes to ask me for her money. And I say, no, I lent it to Chime, but wait, I will collect it back from him. And once I do, I will give it back to you. It doesn't work that way. So banks are willing to provide that financing. And there's an assurance that I want to give everybody on the call today. There are some interesting banks that have come up recently. I'm not here to advocate for any bank, but I will speak for my employer and I will speak proudly. And I think Chime is here to bear witness. We started a conversation on a transaction about a week now, and we're concluding. And even he admits that he hasn't seen that kind of structure before. There's a lot more to be done with banks and financial advisors, right? All I want to charge everybody here to do is please continue the conversation. provide a lot more illumination as to what is happening in this sector to the banks, to government, so that you can attract the right policies that would enable your sector thrive, and watch capital flow in unabated. It is the same risk you face that the fintechs face, but they've been able to scale successfully. It is because they've gotten the attention of a certain class of investors. And it's the same thing that you can do. And likewise, the agri sector. So I want to thank Recyclan for this initiative. I would like to leave this with them. Please invite us for other sessions, because as we continue this engagement, we also on the banking or the lending side will learn a lot more about what you're going through, accessing credit from us or anywhere else, and we'll be able to help to come back internally and be your advocates in the various banks that you want to approach. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much to everyone again. I mean, you can look at the chats. Everyone has said that this conversation has been extremely insightful, very timely. So this is obviously an issue that a lot of people have had on their minds. I'm super happy that we're having this conversation. So we're very, very short for time, but I do want the panelists to answer a few questions. I know Harold had a question. I would like to say a couple of people have put their questions in the chat, and I'll get to those. But for Harold, please, one question. I know Harold has a lot of questions, but if you can ask one.
Okay, I'm just going to keep it simple. First and foremost, thank you to all the speakers, panelists, and we really appreciate you guys being here. For Jubril and for Kashitolu, if you guys haven't realized, this is actually a trap. When you guys say stuff like, you should actually go and look for a bank, why do you think we brought you guys here? So question is straight, right? We'll keep it simple. Advisor, we have Jubril. Jubril, you sell yourself, do you get? Kashitolu, I don't know why you're not mentioning your bank loud, but I would say, I believe everyone here will want to ask one question or ask one thing. This is not a question. This is us begging or asking. Can we make Sterling Bank the Recyclers Bank, right? We will definitely invite you for other sessions, but if other banks are not seeing this industry as viable, can you take out time? When you walk into a bank and you say you do oil and gas, there's a department. Can Sterling Bank be the first bank to actually have a sustainability or whatever we're going to call it, a circular economy department or whatever it's called, so that every single person on this call, it's not just for plastic, for people in metal, for whatever it is, you guys understand this industry we're in, because there's potential. $8 billion is what we just mentioned. It's not small money. Any bank that has on the balance sheet knows the effect of that, right? I believe we can actually get Sterling to actually create this. It will go a long way. So once you're a recycler, you know your first step. Once you register with regulatory body, is go and open Sterling Bank accounts. Thank you very much.
Sorry, let me quickly respond to that. I'm sure. So today, maybe I didn't mention it, and that was on purpose. My bad. Let me go ahead and say this. Sterling Bank in the last 3 years has changed the kind of banking we do. We focus on financing areas that will make impact on the economy. I'm sorry, I don't know if everyone can hear me. I've been struggling with the
Perfectly, we can hear you.
Excellent. So we focus on what we call the heart of Sterling. It means it's very, very simple. It's healthcare, education, renewable energy, agriculture, and transportation. So you can see those are the areas where there's least appetite for financing in the country today. But we've done a lot of work there. In agriculture, I think we can beat our chest to say we're one of the largest lenders per balance sheet to that sector today. So much so that there's nothing that happens that the CBN does not consult Sterling Bank on in terms of agriculture. The same is happening with healthcare, the same is happening with education, the same is happening with renewable energy. For renewable energy, we even put our money where our mouth is. As I speak to you, I'm in our head office in 20 Marina. We are putting what you call solar panels, wrapping the entire building, all 17 floors with solar panels to show that a building can be sustained on renewable energy alone. It's not something you will find banks do typically, but we've decided that's the way to do it because we've come to the realization we have to differentiate ourselves in the market, and we've been doing that tremendously in the last 3 years. Recyclan approached us for a structure about a week and a half ago. I think we closed day before yesterday. For me, it's also of interest because we had a financial advisor in the journey, and that was Jubril's Ion Capital. So it's just what you call a perfect mix of an advisor, a willing bank, and a client who knows what they want. I would say to you and everybody in this session, give the banks a chance. Approach us with what you want, and let us have that engagement. Regarding Sterling Bank, we are more than eager to be partners to you. But I would leave with one caveat. You have to be ready as an entrepreneur to put your money where your mouth is. You have to be ready to back your business. And like I said to Chimi a couple of days ago, you must be willing to put some skin in the game. Thank you.
Thank you, Kashetolu. Harold, I hope your question has been answered. I think that was a good answer. So someone actually posted in the chat that they would like to add to the conversation. He didn't specifically have a question. I hope he's still on the call. Ojerime, if you're still here.
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for joining. You mentioned
Hey, how's it going?
And you wanted to contribute.
Yes, but I'm trying not to take everyone's time because obviously it's been 35 minutes, I think, over time. So I'm just going to make a couple contributions. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Right. So I just wanted to just point out a couple things. So currently I work with Ernst & Young in corporate governance and risk management. And I was actually very happy with what the rep from Sterling Bank said, because we are very aware of their, I would say, the initiatives that they're taking right now in terms of sustainability. And I think we're in the middle of some items with them, obviously, which I can't disclose at the moment. But what I wanted to say or contribute was the focus of this conversation, I think, from all the assessments we've done over the last 2.5 years, needs to go beyond just the banks and the companies that are involved in this, right? So we can have a conversation within just the banks and these guys, but then you forget that there's so many stakeholders in the game. So I think we went to university together. Exeter we did actually. Yeah, we did. Yeah. So Exeter, for instance, I know, like in the business school, we had. I noticed something, and I went to talk to my lecturer about it. That a lot of some of the exam questions we had, some of the case studies we had, looked very recent and very real. And then I posed the question: are you sure that organizations don't bring their problems to university students as exam questions, and then take that feedback on what they do in the exams back to these organizations? And he looked at me and he smiled and he was like, "What the hell are you on about?" But like, I could see that there was some truth to what he said. So I think in a larger scale, and the CBN for banks has come up with some regulations about like disclosures on ESG related items. I know the FRC as well has asked for some disclosures. We also have so many policies in place, but I think the CBN currently and other organizations, global regulators and local regulators are taking steps in. I just think like this conversation going forward, we would need to pay a whole lot more attention to the entire ecosystem, right? So when you've made these products, for instance, the market, are they ready to buy or make the purchase? What's the demand for the product? Are you able to compete with China, for instance, for recycled materials? And I know one thing for as well, just very quickly around plastics, that recycling plastics is a very major problem that lots of people have not been able to crack up until now, because there's so many kinds of plastics that have been mixed in different ways. And even when you're sorting, like it's never a straightforward thing. So I just think like before we try to center that conversation around banks and around the companies in the system, if the view can go beyond that to all the stakeholders and get the buy-in all the way from the regulators, the banks, all down the value chain to the consumers, to the organizations who already have, for instance, very long-term agreements with suppliers for the glass, for instance, for the plastics. So when we can solve those problems, then I think we can gain some steam. As long as we can get them, as soon as we get the demand, we know Nigeria, everybody's going to copy the thing that's making everybody money. So as soon as we can establish a demand, then I think everything is fine. So that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, OJ. I think, can I call you that, OJ? That's fine. So I really don't want to take anybody else's time, but there's one question I'll ask. Zainab Lawal asked, long-term may mean higher risks. How do you guarantee higher returns in the long term? I'm assuming that is a finance question. So I'll ask either Kashatu or Jubril to answer. I'm not sure if you need more context to the question, but we're happy to answer as is.
Sorry, the question was long-term risk.
Long-term may mean higher risks. How do you guarantee higher returns in the long term?
Oh, okay. So we had spoken to that in the course of this session where we talked about the right type of structure for your cycle, right? So when you start, it's high risk and there's a need to de-risk or to address or mitigate those risks to get financing, right? That financing is typically more expensive because you need it to start off, right? But by the time business stabilizes, you're able to make more demands and ask or how do I use, let me borrow Chime's words to me. You're able to threaten your bank after you've done quite well. That, look, I need you to reduce my pricing and what have you, okay? And so you begin to have a better risk-reward mix, okay, as you go along. At the end of the day, high risk does require high reward for it to, for anybody to come into it, okay? The point is that exists in the recycling, in the waste recycling world today. There's a lot of money to be made, 8 billion, okay? And it is dollars.
50 million.
Hello?
Sorry, no, go ahead.
No, so I said 8 billion and it is in dollars, right? That in itself is enough of a reward. The question is whether you have banks that are able to be patient enough to dimension the risk and provide that financing to reap those rewards. From the session today, I think we've demonstrated that some banks do exist that can do that.
Thank you so much. So we really run over time. However, I don't think it was in vain. I hope everyone was taking notes. Gems were definitely dropped from the comment section. I can already see that a lot of people enjoyed the session. So thank you again to all our panelists. And just in case everyone kind of got lost in the mass of information that was shared, I'll just give like a tiny summary. So from the finance guys, get a good financial advisor. Capital is available for us in this recycling industry. Just finding the right structure for you is important. Go to the banks, be specific with what you want, and specifically Sterling Bank, they are willing to help, so go to them. And then, yeah, we're helping you sell. Like I mentioned in the beginning again, oh, I'm echoing. Sorry. Sustainable Industry Talks, this is the first of many. To this first session, we decided to touch on finance. With the next one, we'll obviously touch on the wider ecosystem, as OJ mentioned. And we're not just here to attack the banks, obviously not. This was an opportunity to strike up a conversation, to educate them and to have us be educated by them as well. So thank you again to all our panelists. And with that, I would just like to say Thank you to everyone attending. We look forward to seeing you at the next one. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Bye.
Coco, sorry for button, just to add. Yes, get the right bank, Sterling Bank.
Thank you
Go
very
with the right
much.
advisor, Ion Capital.
Sorry, Chibet, what did you say?
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you,
Thank you,
Recyclan,
guys.
for organizing this.
Thank you very much.
Merry Christmas.
Jibril,
everyone.
this is Zainab from Kaduna State.